Hey all, old guy, old camera. I'm finally going to go through with it. We're going to run some roll film through an old folder medium format camera. It's a German camera, 1951 model Franca, Rollfix Jr. And like I've mentioned in some of my other videos, a model of camera would have more than one trim package, more than one shutter, more than one lens, and this is the lower end of the Rollfix line. But that's okay because it's still a really good lens and a good shutter, and it's a clean camera, and we're going to put some brand new film through it, not the expired film I usually shoot. So let's see if we can load it. Again, we got to play the how does the camera open game. This one here has a little button on it where you sort of slide it forward and the back opens. Now, modern medium format cameras will have all sorts of reference points in here to help you sort of line the film up, but we don't have that with this one. But we have these two little windows here, which I'll explain later, that are going to help us line this up. All right, Kodak 120 roll film works in lots of modern cameras, also works in some of these older cameras, not like a 35mm cartridge. It's literally film this wide, rolled up around the spool, and there's a paper backing rolled around with it, and that's what's keeping it from being exposed right now. So there's a seal. We're going to break the seal. Try to. There we go. Pull that off. Don't want any bits and pieces of paper floating around in the back of the camera. Now there's a tab that folds out. This is the tab that's going to go on the take-up spool inside the camera. This particular camera has these nifty little fold-out sockets for the film and the take-up spool. There's the take-up spool in there. I think there's a way to pop it out. These cameras, these old cameras, you've got to have a blank take-up spool. There is no spool built in like a 35mm camera. So we're just going to set that in there. I don't think there's any slots per se. This is a good spot for an edit so that I can struggle with this. And okay, there's a little nub right there. So pull up on this knob a little bit. Okay, so now it's in, and it's folded shut. So now there's going to be a slot. There's two slots in that spool. There's a wide slot and a narrow slot. We want, shoot, I don't know. I just read it and I can't remember. We're going to stick it in the wide slot because the end of the tab here, see, it's narrow on the one end and it gets wider. So we're going to stick it in to the wide slot. I can do this while holding it up. Now the instructions, which you can still find online, say get the, all right, let's put the other end of the spool in here so I don't drop it and have it go flying. There's a nub on the bottom of this one too, so you got to line up the hole in the spool with the nub. All right, got it folded in. Got my tab out. Bear with me off camera while I do this. Stick the flappy in the slot. All right, let's start rotating. And again, you want to make sure the tab doesn't pop out. So we're going to turn, turn, turn. All right, now, a lot of these films, as you spool through, the paper backing has numbers on it. There's lines, there's reference points. We're going to close the back right now and make sure it catches that little button. All right, it's nice and tight. On this particular camera, there's two windows, two little red windows, and you slide open the windows. I don't know if you can see that. You slide that thing and it kind of opens the windows. And now as I scroll through, I will at some point see a number 1 pop through to the window that I want, which is this lower one. Haven't done this a lot. Being careful. Don't want to go past my starting point, because there's a bunch of paper on the leading edge of this roll. So you're winding paper, and then the film comes later. Once you have the back closed, the film starts coming across, and you need to stop on the first frame, which apparently takes forever to get to. Oh, wait, there it is. It's not a number, it's an arrow. I saw an arrow go by, probably giving me a heads up that the one is coming. The anticipation, the fear of going too far. I don't know if that's a one or not. Let me get my readers. Okay. All right. So that's probably the one. And I want the one in this window because I'm taking rectangular pictures. This camera is, if it had the mask, which I don't have, there's a removable mask in the back of the camera that will let you take square pictures. Now watch how you know which window is which. When you close the windows, it shows the sizes, 2 1/4 by 2 1/4, 2 1/4 by 3 and a whatever, quarter probably. So I'm going to be using, since I don't have the mask, I'll be taking 2 1/4 by 3 1/4 pictures. And we're going to leave this window shut because, you know, while that red lens is supposed to keep the sunlight out, or the UV or whatever that'll damage the film, it's best to keep it closed so that the film doesn't get fogged by light leaking in. So we're going to keep that shut. Okay, now with the film that we think is loaded correctly, I'm going to show you real quick how to open this one up. I believe this is the button that releases the folder mechanism. Now this is very similar to the Agfa camera I did a video on, where there's only 3 shutter speeds. The shutter's pretty simple. It's manual focus, where you're just sort of guesstimating your distance, and the aperture isn't real bright. It's a 4.5 maximum aperture lens, which is, you know, it's going to work fine. Apparently it's a pretty good quality lens. It's a German camera, West Germany, 1951. Apparently the way these made it into America was Montgomery Ward carried them, and I actually have a picture, which I'll try and pop in here, of the actual camera manual that has the Montgomery Ward name on it. So department store imported them. But we're going to take this out today and shoot it and try and get some color film pictures with a extremely old camera that appears to be in very good shape. It's got a really small viewfinder. There's no rangefinder mechanism in it. It's pretty much just for lining up your shot. This one doesn't have the little fold-up window that some do. Flash hot shoe if you were going to use a flash, but we're not. We'll be outside today, so we'll see how it goes. See you shortly. Okay folks, we're out here on the beach. We're taking some pictures of some old submarine watchtowers out on the Delaware coast. I took my first shot while nobody was looking. I used f8 at a 200th of a second. So we're gonna wind the film and see if we get that number 2 to come around. And I'm going slow because I don't want to miss it, because there we go. All right, I don't know if you can see it. There's a number 2 in the window. So we're ready to go. Now to wind this shutter, there's no big thumb bar. There's just a little lever right here. And you wind the shutter. There, it is wound, it is cocked, it is ready to go. And that, on this particular camera, is the shutter button. So I'm going to get a different angle, and we'll take another picture. You can hit pause or hit stop. All right, the sun came out. Just to complicate matters, I cranked the aperture down to f/22. This is 200 speed film. I still have the shutter speed at the 200th. I'm going to do a vertical. Click. Can't wait to see how they come out. Something fun about these cameras, when you take the picture, if you don't wind the film to the next frame and you take another picture, you've created a double exposure, which I did at least once. So we'll get to see what that looks like after the film comes back from the lab. Just some commentary on the conditions. Bright sometimes, overcast sometimes. The sky's pretty. Generally out here, people like to take pictures early in the morning. Toward the evening, you get the golden sunlight on these things, and they look real pretty. I have issues getting out of bed early, and it was cold this morning, and it's still a little chilly for end of April. Don't drop your camera in the sand, but I can't wait to see what we have. Well, we're back at the Old Guy Studios. We got back from the beach. We still had a couple of pictures left to take. So what we did, we went just random train pictures. I stopped by a rail yard and got a couple of locomotive shots just to finish up the roll. So I got to frame number 8. And if you remember, we look in the little windows here to see what frame we are. And once you get to the last shot, because you only get 8 pictures when you're doing the 2¼ by 3¼ shots in a camera like this, it's incredibly inefficient to have a roll of film that only does 8 pictures. Now, if I recall, it's been a while since I've used a medium format camera, probably 10 or 15 years, and it wasn't like this, but the concept is still the same. Once you get to the end of the roll, you just start turning, because you're trying to transfer the film, the backing paper and the end of the roll of film all the way onto, did you hear it click? You might not have heard it click. Just like 35mm cameras, once you turn enough, and well, on a 35mm camera, you're pulling the tab back in to the spool. In this case, you're pulling all the film and all the paper off of the original spool onto what was an empty spool. And once you've turned it enough, you can kind of hear that you did it. All right, so now we think we did it. You like how I call myself we. So let's open the camera. Let's try to open. Okay. All right, so there we are. This is the roll of film now. It started out life here. See, there's the empty spool, which is a plastic spool. I believe my original one here might be metal. All right, we're gonna flip open the little doodad that holds the film, and we're gonna try not to drop it on the floor. So I might do this off camera. Okay, let me close the camera, set it down so I don't kill myself or kill the camera. Okay, so here's the film. Now, the trick of this is it's just hanging loose. But voila, they give you a tab at the end, which is kind of like a postage stamp or an envelope. Give it a little lick. Wrap it around. Can you see that? You can see that probably. And you can see now it says, where's the camera? Over here. Exposed. So when you go walking around with this in your pocket, and you probably shouldn't do that for too long, and you pull it out and go, it says exposed. So you know this is the film that you've shot. And it's a C41 process, which means that any color photo lab can process this if their machine can handle the bigger film. And I imagine most of the machines all do. if you've ever seen a 35 millimeter, well, a color film machine at a 1 hour lab, of course they don't have those anymore. I still have one in my town, one. They tape the end of the film to a plastic sheet with sprocket holes, and it feeds it into the machine. And I don't think the size of the film matters, because they can do the little 110 skinny little negatives, or they can do 35s, and they can probably tape this to the same mechanism and draw it into the machine where all the chemicals are, and it basically dips itself in the developer, and then it dips itself into the stop bath, and then it dips itself into the fixer, and then it dips itself through a rinse cycle, and it's all in a huge machine with a conveyor belt, and it comes out the end, and I believe that probably there's a dryer in there to dry them out, because they come out dry. Years and years and years ago, I worked at a Ritz Camera, R-I-T-Z. It was a chain of camera stores in the United States, and most of them had a 1 hour lab machine. I was just camera sales. You know, I was the guy that worked at the cash register and got to sell cameras. And it was the when was it? 86 through 1990 or so. I might have worked at one in 90 or 91. I worked at a few different stores. So all the cameras back then of the era, I got to sell, play with, you know, behind the counter. That being the, you know, the Olympus OM2S, the OM3, the OM4, the Nikon F3, FA2, FE2, the Minolta X700, Pentax ME Super, what was the Super program? Something like that. There was a Ricoh. What else did we carry? Some Polaroids, but they were the one-step type back then. It wasn't the peel-apart film anymore, although we sold that film, but it was just where the picture shot out the front and developed in 15, 20 seconds. But that sure was cool. I was in college at the time, and just being able to be around, I'd love to go back and do it again. But of course, those places don't exist anymore. Film cameras are gone for the most part. 1 hour processing is gone for the most part. You know, nowadays you take your film to the drugstore and you send it away. They don't even send the negatives back unless you request it. Unless you have a professional lab still in your area that, I mean, will print digital pictures as well, but they'll still do film. And I just wonder how long it's going to be before the lab I have near me goes away. But for now, you know, they're hanging in there. Anyway, I digress. That's what I do best. I'm going to take this tomorrow. It's too late now. And drop it off and get it developed. I might see it in a day or two. Hopefully I'll get something on here and be able to share it and, you know, be able to say that I took pictures with a camera like this, which I have never done before, like this one. And maybe you will be inspired to do the same. Every camera, it's just like, okay, how does this one close? I'm not even sure, but I got it closed.